I'm a big believer in writing things down because paper with writing on it never forgets and serves as a backup to memory failure. And the great philosophers say when you have some good thoughts, don't just think them, ink them. Put them and write them down, ink them, you know. So here's the story of The Coach and Us. Although The Coach and Us is a true basketball story, it is much more than that. At the core of the book is an effort to link holistic thought and theory with living in sport in general. The role of holism in sports is a heartwarming, moving story. I have been reading a lot on holistic health and healing, the holistic approach to health care. Often I ask myself, why not a holistic approach to sport? Holism comes from a Greek word meaning whole. The majority of people familiar with holism usually associate it with holistic medicine. This is the tendency in medicine to treat the whole person, body, mind, and spirit, not just the medical problem that the patient brings with him. In addition to the medical problem, a holistic practitioner focuses on the patient's total living situation, the mental, emotional, environmental, social, cultural, and spiritual problems that cause concern and directly influence recovery and outcome. It's better to know the person who has the disease than the disease that has the person, says Elliot Dasher in his book, Whole Healing. During this time, my friend Nate, who I previously mentioned, a DePaul alumnus, telephoned me and asked if I was watching the DePaul Blue Demons on TV. While we were commenting on the peaks and valleys that the team was experiencing, I suddenly interjected. You know what DePaul needs? I think the school ought to play holistic basketball. Nate said he heard of the word holistic and asked me what it meant. I said, regarding human behavior, to me it means that the spiritual nature of the person is the driving force, and the body and the mind are cooperating with it all at once. Yet in a nutshell, if all three dimensions aren't taken into account with the spirit running the show, then the person is incomplete. But when they're in sync, then we have a situation where there's a whole lot more than meets the eye. Nate said, but you're not only talking about basketball, this pertains to everything in life. I said, it doesn't matter whether you're playing tiddlywinks, hanging wallpaper, or whatever.
Now, you approach Coach Myers with these thoughts and this attitude.
Nathan picked up on it. He said, I'm going to call Ray Meyer about this. And I said, well, I doubt whether he's going to entertain us. He said he's got great character, which he does. He's just a marvelously wonderful man that I am very fortunate to have become acquainted with.
And you have had a relationship with him, so he reacted how?
He reacted initially very positively to the holistic approach.
Were you surprised that he responded so quickly?
I was surprised about how humble he was. There was no putting on of airs. It was just like you meet somebody that's a celebrity and you mesh with them so easily the first time that it seems like you've known him for years and years.
Mm-hmm. And you developed a wonderful relationship with him?
Yes, I have 30 letters that he's written me personally.
30 personal letters?
30 personal. I've written him 30 personal.
And did you continually discuss this holisticness? I mean, I'm sure.
Yes, we did.
Grateful.
Somewhat, and he discussed basketball, and he discussed his life with me, his trials and tribulations, which I was able to share with him. I was really surprised that he had such trust in me, you know, that he would tell me about things that were supposedly would be private, and yet he didn't have any qualms that I would give them to the press, which I never would.
You know, you came along at a time when he was open to it. It was meant to happen. And
well, he was a very religious man.
He was.
And he loved his wife, and he had a great family. And they were all religious, and he was a Roman Catholic, and God was an important part in his life, probably next to his family, if not first, you know, equally with his family.
Well, that's wonderful when a man can do that, because it's not easy. Now, you also have lectured on training and actively developing willpower at Truman
College. And I've also lectured at the school here in
Skokie?
Yeah, the school in Skokie. The college. What's the college? It skips my mind.
Oh, that's all right.
Oakland Community College.
Oh, Oakland.
I was there about 4 or 5 times.
And you spoke to special group?
I spoke to the group of athletes, and I spoke to the coach and so forth, and they wanted me to come back, but I didn't come back for one reason. I asked for one-on-ones. I wanted to know the impact of my thinking, how critical and impactful it was on the students. And the college coach said to me, I can't let you speak one-on-one. I won't allow you to speak one-on-one with the students. Well, I never knew how they were digesting, whether they were mentally digesting the material that I was presenting.
Well, did they react in any way, writing to you or telling the coach about what your talk meant to them?
All I know is that every time I presented the holistic approach to basketball or to sports, the results were always positive. They never hurt any team. Some people say, well, how do you know how much it'll help them? I don't. It all depends on the people, how religious they are, how they take the power of the will, power thinking, power choosing, the power of love I use, and so forth, whether or not they take to that. But if a person hears it even one time, and they go out to play, they will play, or in my experience, they have always played better. They have never played worse.
Oh, that says it all.
Well, I mean, and then I thought to myself, boy, it would be mind-boggling if I had a chance to sit down and talk to these people one-on-ones over a period of time, and if they began to internalize this material.
You know, it's interesting because you really have to guess what's in someone's thoughts or their heart. So I would imagine it would be very difficult to know how they adapted your teaching.
Well, I always look at what I have in common. I always try to focus on, even though we have differences of opinion, there is something that we share a common nature on. Mm-hmm. And then I build on that. You know, I go and start with we have something in common and go on that. And what happens is after they hear me or a few times and they get to trust me and so forth, they start to reveal things about themselves, and they start to ask questions about motivation. Motivation means motive in action.
Ah.
And a lot of people
Beautiful.
don't know that, but that's what motivation means.
You love words, don't you?
Yes, I do.
And they're wonderful to dissect and interpret. You also.
And another thing is, I might say, whatever a person does well, he does if he's motivated by love. Deep love, one of the great philosophers said, should be your only motivation. Now that's pretty hard for anybody to reach up to,
Wow.
but if we can approach that level, we develop power, and we have high energy vibrations, and these high energy vibrations that we develop rub off on the people that you communicate with.
It's so beautiful. Most people are afraid to talk about that. We just talked about that before. People are very comfortable in their habits, and I think they're afraid to change or to read these classic authors, don't you think?
Yes, I always tell them that to fear not changing. A lot of people, they fear changing. I tell them, don't fear changing.
Well, they're afraid, sure.
Be afraid of not changing, because then your life will not progress forward, but it'll, if anything, regress.
Now, you also counsel school teachers on behavior modification. Let's talk about that.
My cousin, Dr. Ray Candleman, who I mentioned, gave me some teachers. I talked about systematic desensitization. That's if a person has anxiety and it's on a high level. You start them, you say, if a person has anxious about dogs, you say, are you afraid of a dog sitting here right now? They'll say, no, I'm not. Then I move them a little closer. Let's get 10 feet closer. Visualize you're 10 feet closer to the dog. Are you afraid of the dog now? No. Then I say visualize 15 or 20 feet and try to get through systematic desensitization to get them to reduce their anxiety level.
Don't you think most
way.
of those fears are because they've had an unpleasant experience when they were little? Very
good question. Most of the fears are learned. There's very few fears that are unlearned. One fear is, they say, a baby is afraid of loud noises at birth and so forth, but and that's one natural thing that people are afraid of without having to learn about it.
Oh, I'm sorry to interrupt.
And fear of being dropped and so forth.
Yeah, that's what